Fighters of the 225th Assault Battalion of the Ukrainian Armed Forces have demonstrated a large number of armored combat vehicles that were destroyed on a road where the Russian army was moving in Russia's Kursk region. Several successive attacks of the Russian army were repelled on the road, which the Russians call the Road of Death. As a result, the tanks and armored personnel carriers involved in the attack were blown up and destroyed. Armored vehicles were destroyed mainly by the Ukrainian army's artillery and drone strikes.
The Russian military command may have imposed controversial restrictions on the use of personal vehicles by Russian volunteers delivering military and humanitarian aid to Russian troops on the front lines, likely as part of an ongoing force centralization effort. This is stated in the daily analysis of the Institute for the Study of War, ISW. A prominent Russian mill blogger claimed that many Russian mill bloggers received audio messages in which the Russian military command threatened all service members to stop using personal vehicles that are not registered for military operations in the combat zone. The audio message reportedly revealed that Russian commanders will punish service members caught using personal vehicles by sending the service members to fight as part of an assault group alongside any frontline commanders who authorized the use of private vehicles. The mill blogger claimed that there are claims that the new Southern Military District Commander, likely referring to reportedly recently appointed Lieutenant General Alexander Sanchik, issued the order but did not confirm or deny these claims. The mill blogger noted that the order will effectively allow the Russian military command to stop and confiscate any private vehicles belonging to volunteers delivering humanitarian aid and to commit the drivers and their commanders to frontline assaults as a punishment for violating the order. The mill blogger noted that the timing and the harshness of this order may suggest that the order is fake, possibly in an effort to allow the Russian military command to later reverse its order and appear responsive to public outcry. Other Russian mill bloggers complained that the order will severely impact the community of Russian volunteers that evacuate troops and deliver military and humanitarian supplies to the front line, and warned that the Russian Ministry of Defense's efforts to centralize humanitarian aid deliveries to Russian service members will result in supply and provision shortages among frontline units. The Russian military command has been trying to restrict the use of personal vehicles, personal and certain personal electronic devices in the combat zone and set stricter guidelines for the grooming standards of men on the front lines since January 2023 in a likely attempt to centralize control over Russian forces. So the Kremlin continues to promote the Time of Heroes program, which aims to militarize the Russian government at the local, regional and federal levels as a way to prevent a return of the Afghanistan syndrome in Russia.
The deployment of peacekeepers in Ukraine won't solve the conflict, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Friday. Asked about reports of a possible deployment of international peacekeepers in Ukraine, Peskov said Russia has previously stated the conditions for a settlement of the conflict. "We need to solve the issues that caused this conflict," Peskov told journalists. "Everything is much deeper than the deployment of the peacekeepers' mission." Asked about the Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's statements on Tokyo's desire to resolve the territorial dispute with Russia and reach a peace treaty, Peskov said Japan's unfriendly steps hinder any substantive negotiations. Peskov also said Russia hopes Syrian authorities will quickly restore order after thousands of Syrian insurgents pushed on with their advances on government-held areas in Syria's northwest, reaching the outskirts of the country's second-largest city Aleppo and wresting control of several strategic towns and villages along the way.
Размещение миротворцев возможно только согласие сторон того или иного конфликта. Это раз. Во-вторых, у нас есть абсолютно четкие параметры, необходимые для урегулирования. Это два. И, конечно, для выхода на траекторию урегулирования, конечно, нужно решать проблему первопричин этого конфликта. И здесь все гораздо глубже, чем направление миссии миротворцев. Япония полностью солидаризировалась с недружественной линией стран коллективного Запада, присоединилась ко всем незаконным санкциям, ввела ограничения на наших эконом-операторов и так далее и тому подобное. Все это является недружественными шагами, которые, конечно, в настоящий момент полностью препятствуют каким-либо субстантивным переговорам на этот счет. Что касается ситуации вокруг Алеппо, то, конечно, это посягательство на суверенитет Сирии в этом регионе, и мы выступаем за то, чтобы власти Сирии скорее навели порядок в этом.
The coordinator of the Ukrainian partisan movement Atesh in Crimea began to regularly receive messages from soldiers of the occupation forces serving in air defense units, complaining about difficult conditions and the desire to return to Russia from where they were transferred to the peninsula. As written in the Telegram channel of the resistance movement, for this purpose, one of the military men of the Russian army even reported the locations of 4 modern S-400 systems and missile depots near Yevpatoria. The partisans have already passed their coordinates to the armed forces of Ukraine. Yevpatoria is a city in Crimea that was seized in 2014. Since then, the Russian army has organized locations for military equipment and personnel going to the front in Ukraine, especially after the large-scale invasion. Earlier, reports indicated that Russian soldiers had set up fire positions directly on the beaches of Yevpatoria in the temporarily occupied Crimea. In September 2023, the security service, military, counterintelligence and the Ukrainian Navy carried out a unique special operation near Yevpatoria. As a result, Ukrainian forces destroyed a Russian Triumph air defense system worth $1.2 billion. Ukrainian partisans reported that Russia is expecting a Ukrainian airborne landing in Yevpatoria. An agent of the Atesh partisan movement from the Yevpatoria National Guard of Russia said that the Russians are anticipating a Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance group landing in the area. In response, they are actively strengthening defense structures throughout the city and its surroundings, said the partisans in a post. It is also reported that about half of the families of Rosgvardia officers have left the peninsula due to concerns over potential combat in Yevpatoria. The partisan movement is calling on local residents to share information with Atesh. Last week, during reconnaissance of the Yevpatoria area, an Atesh agent discovered that Russian troops had moved military equipment and air defense systems to the Kursk area to provide additional coverage for the Crimean Bridge. This left the aircraft repair plant and the adjacent airfield practically unprotected and without equipment. Only aircraft fuselages and an old Zu-232 anti-aircraft gun, likely intended for drone defense, remained on the plant's territory. Since the beginning of Russian aggression in eastern Ukraine and the annexation of Crimea, the Ukrainian army and special forces have consistently prepared for potential operations on the peninsula.